So here are a couple of ways to make the histograms. You'll see we've got some data here, which is just some length data, and this is just made up data that I have. And I want to make a length frequency histogram of this. The first way is using the built-in Excel function. So I'm going to need to set up and define the bins here. So I'm going to say bins, and I want them in 25 millimeter groups. So I'm going to drag this down. Now, how many bins do I need? I need to know the maximum value. So I'm going to go equal max, open parentheses. And I'm going to select the top cell. Then I'm going to go Control Shift down arrow to select all the data. Hit return. And my maximum value is 304. So I need this to go to the next biggest value, which is 325. Now to make my histogram, I'm going to go to the Data tab, and then I'm going to go to Data Analysis. And if this does not show up, you just need to install the Analysis Tool Pack. Then I'm going to go to Histogram and hit OK. My input range is the values of my total lengths. And again, I'm going to select the top one and go Control Shift down arrow to select all of them. My bin range is the range that I just made, which is right here. I did not select the label for the total length, so don't check this. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in a new worksheet called Histo, and I'm going to make it have the chart output, and then I'm going to hit OK. And here you see each of those bins and the number of fish in each bin. And if I make this a little bigger, you can see the histogram. And you can clean this up, make these bars a little wider, get rid of this, and make that look good. So that's the way to do it with the built-in histogram function. All right, now I'm going to show you a different method to make these histograms, and it's a little bit more complicated, but I think it makes better histograms. So we're going to make a column right here that we're going to call TL bins, and for each fish we're going to determine what bin it's supposed to be in, so what 25 millimeter group it should be in, and then we'll use a pivot table to summarize by these bins. And when we put a fish into a bin, we're going to have it centered on a value. So whereas before, if we had, say, the 50 millimeter bin, that was everything from 50 millimeters to 75 millimeters. Now, with this method I'm going to show you, a 50 millimeter bin is centered on 50. So it's going to be all the fish from 37.5 millimeters to 62.5 millimeters, which is centered right on 50. And I just like the histograms better that way. So the formula is a little complicated, but if you break it down, it makes sense. So we're going to go equals, and we're going to do a couple of open parentheses. And then we're going to say int, which is integer. So this just takes a function and gives you just the integer value. It drops off the decimal value. And we're going to do a couple of open parentheses. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the cell with our length, and we're going to subtract 12.5 from it. Now, why are we doing that? This is how we're going to help center each value on a particular bin. So we're going to shift it down by 12.5. Close that parentheses. So we're going to take that shifted value and divide it by 25. So we're finding out how many 25 millimeter bins will go into the shifted value. And that's what the int is going to do. So we can close that parentheses. And so now we have the number of bins that'll go into the shifted value. And so now we need to multiply that number by 25. And so we've got the number of 25 millimeter bins times 25. That's going to put us in the correct range. And so then we're going to close that parentheses. But because of all the fancy wrangling we've done, we need to add back in 25. And we'll close that parentheses. Now that looks a little crazy, but you see it here. If you copy this down exactly, it works. When I hit return, you see that that is in the 25 millimeter bin. And that's not correct. No, that is correct. I'm sorry. Nope, that is correct. The 25 millimeter bin is centered on 25. So that's from 12.5 to 37.5. This fish is not quite 37.5, and so it's in that bin. Let's copy this down one. You see that this is in the 200 millimeter bin. All fish that are 187.5 to 212.5, I think that's right, is going to be in this bin. And you see this next one should be in the 75 millimeter bin. So you see how it's centered on each one of these bins. Now, if we want to copy that all the way down, we're going to go to this little cell, this little square here. I'm just going to double click it. And now each fish has the proper bin it's supposed to be in. So now we have to summarize by the bins. So we're going to click in this upper cell, and we're going to go to Insert, Pivot Table, and it selects the entire range of data, and we're going to hit OK. And then we want the bins to be our rows, so we're going to drag them down here. And you see that each row is labeled with the proper bin. And so we just need to count how many have this bin, how many have this bin, how many have this bin. So we're going to take the same value and drag it into the values area. And it's summing the TL bins. We don't want that, so let's click on this, go to Value Field Settings, and change that to the count. So it's going to count how many are in each bin, and there you have it. And so now you don't want to graph this because it's the pivot table acts funny, so you just want to select the data, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Now we want to start with 0. And there are 0 fish in that bin. And we want to make sure we have every value. So we've got every value. And so this is the total length in millimeters. And this is the number. And so now this is what we need to graph. So let's select those data. We go to Insert, Column Graph, Simple Column Graphs. Now I'm going to move this to make it its own sheet that I'm going to call Histo 2. And so I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to select these and get rid of them. I'm going to select the title and either give it a title or get rid of that. It's up to you. You notice that my horizontal axis is just numbered. It's not labeled. So I'm going to go to Select Data, Horizontal Axis Labels, Edit, and I need a range that's got the horizontal labels in it. Well, that's just back over here. That's my total lengths. So I'm going to select those, hit OK, hit OK, and now you see that each one is labeled properly. And now I want to make these axes look better, so I'm going to select that, right-click, Format Axis. First thing I'm going to do is go up here, and I'm going to crank up that font size to about 14 so I can see it. Also, for some reason, it doesn't draw the axis. I don't know why. So click on that. Let's go over here to the line and make this a solid line whose color is black. And now we've got that axis. If I can, there you can see that axis. We're going to do the same for this axis. We're going to crank this up to about 14. We're going to give it a solid line that's black. Of course, we need labels. So we come here, we add the axis titles. This axis is N, and that's too small. So while it's still selected, we're going to crank it up to about 16. This title is total length in millimeters. And again, we're going to crank this up to 16. And finally, I want these to be fatter so they almost touch. So I select, I click on one so all the bars are selected. And I'm going to come over here to maybe this choice. And I'm going to change that gap width down to a very small number, like, oh, I don't know, 8 or so. And there you have a histogram that's centered. So I know that all these fish are centered on 25. So this is fish that are 12.5 to 37.5. And this is fish that are 37.5 to 62.5, and so on. And so if I look at a bar, I can tell a little bit easier what the size range is. So that's my opinion. That's how we do it. Let me know if you got any questions.